Hello, everybody. This is the Authority Podcast presented by Minority Authority, the brand. My name is Darnell. So, have you ever heard of someone saying something like, I'm so glad that this old way of thinking is dying, or that these backwards people are dying off, or that racism is becoming less and less of a factor because those who lived during, say, the civil rights era are getting older and are no longer controlling the narrative? This is the biggest myth that anyone can tell to themselves or anybody else for that matter. I am not the first person to say this, but I'll reiterate it. White culture is a culture of racism. Prevailing white culture anyway. There have been plenty careers in politics, industry, and wealth building on the fears of the other, and also trickery and thievery committed in the name of profit off of blacks. This includes cultural appropriation, which if you've been around, you know exactly what that is. So let me give you some buzzwords, if you will. George Bush, Willie Horton, Ronald Reagan, welfare queen, Donald Trump. All right, Donald Trump don't count. He did everything. These are politicians who ultimately won office scaring white people about those others. And one, for instance, the brand and one has a great documentary on Netflix. A few well-to-do white kids basically liked basketball and wanted to build a company around it. How do you get a buzz for this? You go to the hood, you get young hoopers who are starving for bare necessities, give them a little money, sell the company at a handsome profit, and forget the people who helped to get you there. That, to me, is the ultimate form of cultural appropriation. It's Black History Month. And I was basically scrolling through my Facebook news feed, and someone posted a list of all the black inventions. Not all of them, but a fair number of them. And a lot of the things that had contributed in a major way to modern life. And just pure speculation here, why haven't any of these inventions evolved into black-owned companies now? I don't think every black person just decided to sell all the ideas. I mean, I've seen like, what did I see? I seen like potato chips. I seen peanut butter. I seen an air conditioner. I seen ice cream, and I seen countless others. As a great philosopher and author James Baldwin once said, as long as you think you're white, there's no hope for you. What do you mean by that, you might ask? Sure. You see, whiteness is an invention. It's not a nationality. It's damn sure not American. It is a derivative of blackness. Something that only has value when you factor in its relationship to blackness. If whiteness does not have something to look down on, it doesn't feel so good about itself. So, to tie that into the topic, if you need something to be beneath you so that you can feel better about yourself, the concept will never die. Just as a reminder, the last person to be born into slavery died in the 1970s, and the last recognized living child of a former slave died in 2011. So to put that into perspective or context, 1 of 4 million people at its height, the last person died in the 1970s. That's nearly a half century ago, and race is still a thing. I would like to source a study for you. In the book Deep Roots, How Slavery Still Shapes Southern Politics, political scientists discover something that isn't quite available to the naked eye or casual observation for that matter. In a statistical analysis taken from 1860 census data and public opinion data collected between 2006 and 2011 by the Cooperative Congressional Election Study, CCES for short, they found that whites residing in areas that had the highest levels of slavery in 1860 demonstrated different attitudes today from whites who resided in areas who historically had lower levels of slavery. That came from the book White Too Long, and you can find that information in chapter 5. They found 3 things, so I'll go through them with you. So the 3 things that they found, those in the counties that had higher slave numbers are more politically conservative and Republican leaning. Number 2, they are more opposed to affirmative action and or progressive programs. And number 3, they score higher on questions measuring racial resentment. They figure this out by asking questions with buzzwords in them, and they're able to pick up on the racist hostilities from that. The study concludes that the present-day regional differences are the direct downstream consequences of the slaveholding history of these areas. Now, although I have no proof of the mythical concept of older people being more racist, I have a theory on why people believe that this is. When I was in college, people of all races intermingled and were more open to different cultures and races. This was done without a watchful eye of parents and beyond the view of judgmental reprimand. But the most important reason why I believe that it appears that the younger generation is not as racist as older people is because they are not as tied to the social and economic order of things. That doesn't mean that they are not as racist. It just means that they do not have to appear to uphold the system to thrive in it. As people tend to get older, they buy homes, they secure jobs, and attempt to climb the social ladder, they discover that it is best to not rock the boat and assume cultural norms to maintain your place in society, which in America is a system of inequity. By the way, it is possible for a black person to contribute to a white supremacist ideology. We generally call them coons, shoe booties, or maybe you heard the term, butter biscuits. In a nutshell, these are black people willing to turn a blind eye to racist practices because they themselves stand to benefit, even if it harms the people who look like them. And we have our fair share of them. Silence, for instance, in a white enclave is better for fitting in than outspokenness on issues of human decency that should be nonpartisan. But, of course, an issue like a Black Life Mattering has been politicized. They should matter, and not in comparison to anyone else's life. Black life should matter just as much as white life, or white life should matter just as little as black life. Take your pick. So, as long as you think that you are white, there is no hope for you. Why is it okay to be called black then? Blackness has been assumed by American blacks because their culture and identity has been stolen along with their labor. But that's another show. I once heard that if there were no God, it would be necessary to invent him. Black people needed something to rally around to form some kind of identity and bond. White people wasn't going to let them in. White people, on the other hand, disavowed their own identities and cultural norms. Italian Americans, Irish Americans, German Americans, Russian Americans, etc., to be white. And as I said earlier, white is a culture of hate, but not German, not Russian, not Irish, or any other European country for that matter. Yes, there are racist people in those countries, but each country has cultural and norms and traditions that are completely separate from their Americanized whiteness. Every immigrant coming to America from a European country knew exactly what they were coming for and knew what they stood to gain. And they did so voluntarily, which is a key word. So, as I said before, and I'll say it again, as long as you think you're white, there is no hope for you. As the saying goes, don't tell a lie on me, and I won't tell the truth on you. Now, if you happened upon this video and